Commander Hyun stood at the observation window of the Earth Defense Station, watching the blue planet spin below. 23 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council, and every year brought the same disappointing news. He checked his watch. In 10 minutes, Ambassador Taeyang would face the Council again, asking them to lift the quarantine on Earth. Hyun already knew the answer. It was always no. "Commander, the Council session is starting," said a young officer behind him. Hyun turned from the window and walked to the communications room. Several officers gathered around screens showing the Council chamber. The room was magnificent, with representatives from 47 alien species sitting in a circle. At the center stood Ambassador Taeyang, a calm man in his 50s who had spent half his life fighting for human rights. "The Council will now vote on the human quarantine status," announced a tall, elegant alien. This was Councillor Velnari of the Velkran Empire. His species looked almost human but with silver skin and large eyes. The Velkran controlled much of the Council's decisions. Taeyang spoke clearly. "For 23 years, humanity has followed every rule. We have not expanded beyond our solar system. We have limited our military as requested. We have shared our technology and culture. We ask again, please remove the restrictions on our people." Velnari's expression showed something between pity and disgust. "Ambassador, your people come from Earth, a Class 9 Deathworld, the highest danger rating we have ever recorded. We cannot help where we evolved," Taeyang replied. "Your planet has storms that destroy cities," Velnari continued, "animals that hunt in packs, insects that spread deadly diseases, plants that poison on touch. Your oceans have creatures that can swallow ships. Your history shows thousands of years of warfare. Your own bodies heal too fast, adapt too quickly. You are unpredictable and dangerous." Taeyang's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "We have committed no violence since joining your council." "Yet your potential for violence is clear," said another counselor, a floating crystalline being. "Your entertainment shows celebrate war. Your children play combat games. Your literature is filled with conflict and struggle. You are barely civilized survivors of a nightmare world?" The vote began. One by one, each species voted to maintain the quarantine. 47 votes against humanity, 0 votes in favor. The decision was unanimous, as it had been every year. Hyun turned off the screen. Around him, officers looked angry and frustrated. He understood their feelings. Humanity had done everything right, but it made no difference. "They'll never let us out," said one officer. "They're too afraid." "Can you blame them?" Hyun asked quietly. "Look at us through their eyes. They evolved on paradise worlds where food grows everywhere and predators don't exist. We evolved on a planet trying to kill us every day. We're different, and different scares them." On the other side of the solar system, Dr. Minji worked in her laboratory on Harmony Station. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life. Her job frustrated her constantly. The Council gave her access to thousands of alien species to study, but she could never leave human space to see them in person. "Dr. Minji, incoming transmission," her assistant called. "It's marked urgent." Minji pulled up the message. It came from a research outpost on the edge of Council space. The text made her blood run cold. "Distress signal detected from Pristine Haven. Colony under attack. Unknown hostile force. Requesting immediate assistance." Pristine Haven was a Velkran colony world. 70 million people live there. Minji quickly searched for more information and found fragments of data. The attack was massive. Ships were burning. Cities were falling. She forwarded the message to Earth Defense Command and opened a channel to Commander Hyun. "Commander, have you seen this?" Hyun appeared on her screen. "Just received it. The Council is assembling their peacekeeping fleet." "They've never fought a war," Minji said. "Their ships are beautiful but weak. Their soldiers train in non-lethal suppression. They don't know how to fight a real enemy." "That's not our problem," Hyun replied, but his expression showed doubt. Over the next few hours, more reports came in. The Council fleet reached Pristine Haven and engaged the hostile force. The enemy called themselves the Ravagers, according to intercepted transmissions. They fought with terrible efficiency. Their ships rammed Council vessels. They used chemical weapons. They didn't take prisoners. The Council fleet was being destroyed. Minji analyzed all the data she could gather about the Ravagers. What she found terrified her. Their ships were biological, grown rather than built. They healed damage quickly. Their tactics showed coordination and intelligence. They came from a harsh world, maybe as harsh as Earth. They're like us, she whispered to herself. Deathworlders. But unlike humans, the Ravagers had no interest in peace. They saw the soft Council species as prey, easy targets. Food. On Earth, billions of people watched the news. The Velcrin, who had kept humanity locked in their own solar system, were dying. Some humans felt satisfaction, others felt pity. Most felt conflicted. Captain Yuna sat in the pilot seat of the Indomitable, humanity's most advanced warship. She was only 28, the youngest captain in the fleet. Her fingers drummed on the controls as she watched the reports. "We should help them," she said to her crew. "They imprisoned us," her weapons officer replied. "Let them burn." "That's not who we are," Yuna said firmly. "We don't abandon people who are being slaughtered." In the council chamber, chaos erupted. Reports showed the fleet losing badly. Pristine Haven was falling. Millions were dying, and the Ravagers were accelerating toward the next target. Councillor Velnari sat alone in his office, watching his people die on screens. His pride, his certainty about council superiority, all of it crumbled. He thought about the humans locked in their solar system. Dangerous humans. Violent humans. Military-focused humans. Humans who knew how to fight. His hand shook as he opened a secret communication channel. This violated a dozen protocols. If the council found out, he would lose his position. But his world was burning, and he had no choice. The message reached Earth Defense Command in the middle of the night. Specialist Junho was on duty when it arrived. He read it 3 times before believing what he saw. The message was simple. "We were wrong about you. We're dying. Please help us." Junho immediately forwarded it to Admiral Donghae, the commander of Earth's defense fleet. Donghae was an old soldier, someone who had fought in the last Earth Wars before the Council arrived. He read the message and called an emergency meeting. Within an hour, every important human leader gathered in a virtual conference. Admiral Donghae, Commander Hyun, Ambassador Taeyong, Dr. Minji, and representatives from Earth's government. "They're asking for help," Donghae said. "The species that imprisoned us wants us to save them." "We should refuse," said one government official. "Let them see what it's like to be powerless." "That makes us as bad as them," Taeyong argued. "We're better than revenge." Commander Hyun spoke up. "The Ravagers won't stop at Pristine Haven. If the Council falls, Earth is next. We're trapped in this solar system. We can't run. We have to fight eventually." "There's another problem," Dr. Minji added. "Our fleet is limited by treaty. We don't have enough ships to make a real difference. And if we break quarantine without permission, the Council will consider it an act of war." The room fell silent. They wanted to help, but the politics were impossible. Then Captain Yuna's voice came through the speakers. She had joined the conference uninvited. "There's a loophole. The treaty limits Earth's fleet, but it doesn't stop individual humans from volunteering to serve on non-Earth vessels. And technically, if those volunteers want to bring their own ships, nothing prevents it." Donghae smiled for the first time. "You want to volunteer the entire fleet?" "If the Council officially requests our help, yes, sir." Ambassador Taeyang nodded. "I'll send the message now. The Council either accepts our help and lifts quarantine, or they die with their pride intact." The transmission went out to the Council chamber. Taeyang's words were broadcast across the galaxy. "Humanity stands ready to assist. All we need is permission to leave quarantine." The Council had no choice. For the first time in history, they voted to temporarily lift the human containment protocols. Admiral Donghae stood and gave the order that would change everything. "All available ships, this is Admiral Donghae. Humanity is going to war." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes of Admiral Donghae's call, every military base on Earth lit up with activity. Soldiers reported to duty stations, engineers ran to shipyards, pilots climbed into cockpits. The planet that had been forced to stay quiet for 23 years suddenly roared to life. Commander Hyun watched the numbers climb on his display. 500 ships within the first hour. 700 by the second hour. By the end of the day, 847 vessels had volunteered for combat duty. "This is everyone," Hyun said to Admiral Donghae. "Every warship, every armed transport, every corporate security vessel with weapons. This is everything we have." Donghae nodded. "Then it will have to be enough." The ships were not like council vessels. There were no luxury quarters or observation decks, no botanical gardens or art galleries. These were machines built by people who understood that space was hostile and enemies were real. Every ship had thick armor, redundant systems, and enough weapons to defend itself. Captain Yuna walked through the hangar of the Indomitable, inspecting her fighter squadron. Pilot Minho stood beside his craft, a sleek interceptor painted with a shark's mouth on the nose. "Think we're ready?" Minho asked. Yuna smiled. "We've been ready for 23 years. The Council just didn't want to admit it." Across the solar system, engineer Nari worked frantically in a classified facility. For years, she had been designing weapon upgrades that the treaty forbade her to install. Now those restrictions were gone. She pulled out blueprints that had been hidden away and started giving orders. "Upgrade every ship with electromagnetic pulse weapons," she commanded her team. "Install radiation shielding that can handle solar flare levels. Add biological warfare containment systems. These ships were built for war, but now we make them unstoppable." Dr. Minji boarded the science vessel Horizon. She would travel with the fleet as chief science officer. Her job was to study the Ravagers and find weaknesses. As the ship prepared to launch, she reviewed all available data. The Ravagers were terrifying. Their ships were grown from biological tissue, which meant they could heal damage. They used chemical weapons that dissolved metal. Their tactics showed no mercy or hesitation. They attacked in swarms, using sheer numbers to overwhelm defenses. But Minji noticed something interesting. The Ravagers coordinated perfectly across vast distances. This suggested some kind of communication network. If she could find it, maybe she could disrupt it. At Earth Defense Command, Colonel Jiwon briefed his Marines. These were soldiers trained in over 200 forms of combat. They could fight in zero gravity, toxic atmospheres, extreme heat, and freezing cold. They wore powered armor that would crush the bones of most alien species. "Listen up," Jiwon said to his assembled troops. "The Council thinks we're dangerous. They're right. But we're going to show them what dangerous really means. We're going to fight an enemy that wants to exterminate entire civilizations. And we're going to win." The Marines cheered. These were men and women who had trained their entire lives for combat but never had a chance to prove themselves. Now they would show the galaxy what Earth soldiers could do. 72 hours after the call went out, the fleet was ready. 847 ships gathered in formation around Earth. It was the largest military deployment in human history. Billions of people watched from the surface as the vessels prepared to depart. Ambassador Taiyang gave a final transmission to the fleet. "You carry the hopes of all humanity. Show them who we are. Show them what we can do. And bring our people home safely." Admiral Donghae stood on the bridge of his flagship, the dreadnought Dauntless. Commander Hyun stood beside him. Around them, crew members worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. "All ships report ready," Hyun said. "Then let's not keep them waiting," Donghae replied. "Helm, set course for Pristine Haven, maximum speed." The fleet jumped to hyperspace. Council ships usually took slow, safe routes through hyperspace, avoiding turbulence and gravitational anomalies. Human navigators took the dangerous paths. They flew through regions that would terrify other species, cutting days off the journey. The trip to Pristine Haven took 6 days instead of the usual 12. During that time, the fleet trained constantly. Fighter pilots practiced attack formations. Gunners calibrated their weapons. Marines ran combat drills. Engineers prepared damage control teams. Captain Yuna led her fighter wing through simulated battles. The pilots flew maneuvers that generated forces strong enough to knock most aliens unconscious. Human pilots endured. Their bodies adapted to handle extreme stress. Dr. Minji worked with specialist Junho, the communications officer who had first received Counselor Velnari's distress call. Junho was brilliant with signals and codes. Together they analyzed every piece of data about the Ravagers. Their coordination is too perfect, Minji said. Individual ships react to threats instantly, as if they share one mind. A hive mind? Junho suggested. Possibly. But how do they communicate across light years instantly? Meanwhile, in the council chamber, debate raged. Some counselors celebrated the human response. Others worried about unleashing a force they might not be able to control again. Counselor Velnari listened to the arguments with growing frustration. My world is dying, he finally said, silencing the room. Millions of my people are dead. The Ravagers are moving toward our core worlds. We can debate philosophy later. Right now, we need the humans. The Council's remaining fleet retreated from Pristine Haven. They had lost 60% of their ships. The beautiful vessels, designed more for prestige than combat, had been torn apart by Ravager weapons. Survivors described the horror of biological ships that regenerated damage and enemies that fought with absolute savagery. When the human fleet emerged from hyperspace at Pristine Haven, they found a nightmare. The planet burned. Orbital stations were destroyed. Ravager hive ships surrounded the world like a swarm of insects. The biological vessels pulsed with sickly light, their organic hulls covered in weapon ports and launch bays. The Council's relief fleet retreated to a safe distance. Their commander, a Trell officer named Commander Vesh, opened a channel to the Dauntless. Human fleet, this is Council Command. The situation is hopeless. We recommend immediate withdrawal. Admiral Donghei's face appeared on the screen. His expression was calm, almost bored. Council Command, this is Admiral Donghei. We didn't come here to run away. Get your people clear of the combat zone. We'll handle this. Commander Vesh looked shocked. Handle this? There are 3,000 Ravager ships. Your fleet number's less than 900. You're outnumbered 3-1. Commander Hyun leaned into view. We've faced worse odds. Just watch. The Council ships moved to a safe distance, their crews watching in disbelief as the human fleet charged directly toward the Ravager formation. No hesitation, no fear, just cold determination. The Ravagers detected the new arrivals and turned to face them. Their ships moved with disturbing fluidity, like sharks in water. They opened fire with bioweapons that had destroyed Council vessels easily. The first volley hit human shields and armor. The ships shook but held. Engineers had designed these vessels to withstand punishment. Redundant systems kicked in automatically. Damage control teams rushed to repair any breaches. Return fire, Donghei ordered calmly. The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Kinetic cannons fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. Missiles streaked through space, leaving trails of light. Energy weapons carved through Ravager hulls. The effect was devastating. Ravager ships that had seemed unstoppable against Council vessels now exploded under human firepower. The biological hulls could regenerate, but not fast enough. Human weapons were designed to kill quickly and efficiently. The Ravagers tried their ramming tactics, sending ships directly at human vessels. But human ships were built by Deathworlders. When a Ravager ship tried to ram the cruiser Defiant, the human vessel didn't dodge. It rammed back harder. The collision destroyed the Ravager ship while the Defiant's reinforced hull held. Captain Yuna led her fighter squadron into the heart of the enemy formation. The small craft weaved through Ravager fire with impossible precision. Human pilots performed maneuvers that generated forces that would kill most species. They endured, enhanced by combat drugs and pure adrenaline. Minho destroyed 3 Ravager fighters in quick succession, his weapons tearing through their organic armor. This is for 23 years of being treated like criminals, he shouted over the comm. The Ravagers deployed chemical weapons, clouds of acid designed to dissolve ship hulls. Council vessels had been destroyed by these attacks. Human ships flew right through the clouds. Their hulls were coated with materials designed to resist Earth's most corrosive substances. A little alien acid was nothing. Colonel Jiwan's Marines prepared for boarding actions. Ravager ships tried to latch onto human vessels and send boarding parties. The aliens discovered too late that this was a terrible mistake. When Ravager warriors breached the hull of the destroyer Relentless, they found Marines waiting in powered armor with plasma weapons. The close-quarters battle was brutal and short. Ravager warriors were strong and vicious. Human Marines were stronger and more vicious. Within minutes, the boarding party was eliminated. Dr. Minji monitored the battle from the horizon, analyzing every piece of data. She noticed something important. When human ships destroyed certain Ravager vessels, nearby enemy ships seemed confused for a moment before recovering. "Command nodes," she said excitedly. "Some ships control groups of others. Target those ships, and we disrupt their coordination." The targeting data went out to the fleet. Human gunners began focusing on the command vessels. Each one destroyed caused chaos in the Ravager formation. The battle raged for 14 hours. Neither side gave ground. The space around Pristine Haven filled with debris and fire. But slowly, steadily, the humans gained the upper hand. Admiral Donghae watched the tactical display. "They're breaking. All ships, press the attack. Don't let any escape." The human fleet surged forward. The Ravagers, facing an enemy that fought with equal savagery and superior technology, began to retreat. But human doctrine was clear. Enemies who targeted civilians didn't get to escape and regroup. They were eliminated. By the time the battle ended, the Ravager force at Pristine Haven was annihilated, not defeated, exterminated. 3,000 enemy ships reduced to floating debris. The human fleet was battered, but victorious. They had lost 62 ships and thousands of crew, but they had won. The Council fleet watched in stunned silence as human ships began rescue operations for the surviving Velcrin colonists. What shocked them more was the gentleness. These same humans who had just fought with terrible violence now carefully evacuated civilians, treated wounded, and offered comfort. Counselor Velnari was evacuated to the Dauntless. When he met Commander Hyun face to face, tears ran down his silver cheeks. "We called you monsters," Velnari said quietly. "We were wrong. You're not monsters. You're guardians who learned to fight monsters." Hyun shook his hand. "We're just people who know what real danger looks like." But there was no time to celebrate. Dr. Minji appeared on screen with terrible news. "Commander, I've analyzed the Ravager communication patterns. This wasn't their main fleet. This was a scouting force. The real invasion is coming. Tens of thousands of ships, maybe more. They're heading for the Council core worlds, and they'll arrive within weeks." The bridge fell silent. They had just fought the hardest battle of their lives, and it was only the beginning. The Council convened an emergency session within hours of the Pristine Haven victory. Representatives from 47 species filled the chamber, but the mood was different now. Fear replaced arrogance. Desperation replaced pride. The main screen showed tactical projections. Red markers indicated the Ravager main fleet. There were so many markers that they formed a solid red mass, over 30,000 ships, maybe more. They were 3 weeks away from the Council's core worlds. "We need more time," said a Korvaxian counselor, his crystalline body flickering with stress. "Time to evacuate our populations. Time to build defenses." "We don't have time," Ambassador Taeyong replied. "The Ravagers don't negotiate or slow down. They consume. If we want to survive, we fight now." Counselor Velnari stood. His voice was steady despite everything he had lost. "Ambassador Taeyang is correct. I propose we grant humanity full access to our shipyards and manufacturing networks. Let them transform our fleet into something that can actually fight." The chamber erupted in protests. The proud species of the Council couldn't accept the idea of humans modifying their vessels. Their beautiful ships were symbols of culture and achievement. Admiral Donghae appeared on the main screen. His weathered face showed no patience for debate. "You can keep your pride and die, or swallow it and live. Choose quickly because the Ravagers don't care about your feelings." The vote was close, but survival won over pride. The Council granted humanity unprecedented access to their technology and resources. More importantly, they agreed to place human commanders in charge of all military operations. It was the most significant shift in galactic power in 10,000 years. Engineer Nari arrived at the Velkrin shipyards with a team of 300 human engineers. She looked at the elegant council ships with professional assessment. Beautiful, certainly. Functional for war? Not even close. Strip out the luxury decks, she ordered. Remove the observation lounges, the gardens, the art galleries. This is a warship now, not a cruise liner. Install armor plating, add weapon systems, redundant life support, emergency bulkheads. I want these ships able to take a hit and keep fighting. The Velkrin engineers watched in horror as humans tore apart their masterpieces. But they learned quickly. Nari was patient with those who wanted to understand. She explained why every change mattered. Your ships are gorgeous, she told one upset Velkrin designer. But in combat, pretty gets you killed. Function keeps you alive. We're not destroying your work. We're making it survive. Across council space, the same transformation happened. Human engineers worked around the clock, turning parade vessels into warships. It wasn't pretty, but it was effective. Captain Seungho, Earth's best intelligence officer, worked with Dr. Yu Minji and Specialist Junho to crack the Ravager communication system. They had captured one of the biological command nodes from Pristine Haven. It was still partially alive, kept in containment. It's using quantum entanglement, Junho said, amazed. The Ravagers have organisms in their ships that are quantum-linked. They can coordinate across light years instantly. Seungho studied the readouts. If we can disrupt that link, we break their coordination. They become just a mob instead of an army. Dr. Hannah, a xenopsychologist, joined their team. She was an expert in alien behavior and thought patterns. After studying the captured Ravager organisms, she provided a chilling psychological profile. They don't think like us, Hannah explained. They have no concept of mercy or surrender. They see other species purely as resources to consume. They're from a world even harsher than Earth, where only the most vicious survived. But here's the thing. They've never encountered prey that fights back effectively. They're used to easy victories. So they're bullies, Commander Hyun said. And like all bullies, they don't know what to do when someone punches back harder. Training began immediately. The Council had 3,400 ships after the Pristine Haven disaster. Combined with the human fleet, they had just over 4,000 vessels to face 30,000 Ravagers. The numbers were terrible, but numbers weren't everything. Vice Admiral Yoonji arrived from Earth with reinforcements. She brought converted mining ships with heavy drilling equipment that could be used as weapons, armed colony transports, corporate security vessels. It wasn't the regular military, but everyone who could mount a gun came to help. More importantly, she brought human military advisors. Every council ship would have at least one human officer aboard to help with tactics and combat operations. The culture clash was immediate and shocking. Council officers were used to debate and consensus. Human officers gave orders and expected them followed instantly. Council soldiers trained in non-lethal suppression techniques. Human trainers taught them how to kill efficiently. War is not a debate, Colonel Jiwon told a class of Velkrin soldiers. When the enemy comes, you don't vote on what to do. You follow orders, you trust your training, and you survive. Questions come after the battle, not during. Some species adapted quickly. The Trell, warrior poets who valued both combat and art, took to human training naturally. They understood the poetry of violence. Their long limbs and quick reflexes made them excellent snipers and scouts. Human advisors taught them guerrilla warfare tactics, and the Trell excelled. The Korvaxians, methodical and logical, struggled with the chaos of combat. But they were brilliant at logistics and planning. Human commanders put them in charge of supply lines and fleet coordination. Their crystalline minds could track thousands of variables simultaneously. The Veldrin, an empathic species that felt others' emotions, seemed completely unsuited for war. But human medics discovered they made incredible trauma doctors. Their ability to sense emotional state helped them treat psychological wounds as well as physical ones. Others had severe limitations. The crystalline lumens couldn't endure high-gravity maneuvers. Their bodies would shatter under the force. Engineer Nari designed specialized fighter pods with inertial dampeners. Problem solved. The gaseous Scythe couldn't wear traditional armor. Human engineers created environmental combat suits that contained their gaseous form while allowing mobility. The Xyth became excellent infiltrators, able to seep through small spaces. Every species found their role in the new combined force. It wasn't about making everyone the same. It was about using each species' strengths effectively. Captain Yuna ran the fighter pilot training program. She was brutal in her assessments but fair. Some council pilots simply couldn't handle combat flying. Their reflexes were too slow, their instincts too gentle. Yuna reassigned them to transport or reconnaissance roles, but others surprised her. A young Trell pilot named Solvish performed maneuvers that even human pilots found challenging. His natural grace and coordination made him a natural ace. "You fly like you were born in a cockpit," Yuna told him after a particularly impressive simulation run. Solvesh bowed in the Trell fashion. "You fly like you're fighting a predator. You taught me that flying isn't about beauty. It's about survival." Pilot Minho worked with the bomber squadrons, teaching them attack patterns derived from Earth's hunting animals. Wolves surrounded prey and attacked from multiple angles. Hawks dove from above. Sharks attacked in feeding frenzies. These patterns, tested by millions of years of evolution, worked just as well in space combat. Training lasted 3 weeks. It wasn't enough time to make council species into elite soldiers, but it was enough to give them a chance. More importantly, it taught them how to work together. The combined fleet assembled at a staging area 3 light-years from Velkrin Prime, the Velkrin homeworld. 12 billion people lived there, the largest population center in council space. The Ravagers were heading straight for it. Admiral Donghae stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, looking at the tactical display. 1,200 human ships, 3,400 retrofitted council vessels, nearly 500,000 soldiers from 47 species. It was the largest military force in galactic history, and it probably wasn't enough. Commander Hyun reviewed the battle plan. "We'll form a defensive sphere around Velkrin Prime. Force the Ravagers to come to us. Use the planet's gravity well to our advantage. Target their command nodes first to break their coordination." "The casualties will be terrible," Velnari said quietly. He had insisted on being present for the battle, commanding a squadron of Velkrin ships himself. "Yes," Hyun agreed, "but if we don't fight here, they'll consume world after world. This is where we make our stand." Dr. Minji and Captain Seungho worked in the Horizons laboratory on a secret weapon. They had developed a quantum jammer based on the captured Ravager technology. If they could deploy it in the center of the enemy fleet, it would disrupt their hive mind communication, but someone would have to deliver it. Right into the heart of 30,000 enemy ships. It was a suicide mission. Seungho looked at the device they had built. "I'll take it. I designed it. I know how it works." "You'll die," Minji said bluntly. "Probably," Seungho agreed. "But millions will live. That's the trade. I can accept it." He assembled a volunteer crew. 15 humans and representatives from 5 other species. They would fly a stealth ship through the Ravager fleet, deploy the jammer, and hope to buy precious seconds for the Allied forces to exploit the confusion. Every one of them knew they weren't coming back. The scouts reported the Ravager fleet entering the system. The massive swarm of biological ships filled sensors like a plague. They moved with terrifying coordination, heading straight for Velkrin Prime. Admiral Donghae opened a fleet-wide channel. Every ship, every soldier, heard his words. "We're outnumbered 7-1. The enemy has superior numbers and regenerating ships. By all logical calculations, we should lose this battle. But I don't believe in logic. I believe in the people next to me. Humans, Velkrin, Trell, Korvaxians, all of us. We're not separate species anymore. We're soldiers. And soldiers don't let their home burn without a fight." He paused, then continued with steel in his voice. "The Ravagers think we're prey. Let's teach them the difference between prey and predators. All ships, battle stations, here they come." The Ravager fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a massive wave. 30,000 ships, each one pulsing with hostile life. They formed a wall of biomass and weapons, advancing steadily toward Velkrin Prime. The combined fleet waited in defensive formation. Human ships at the front, their heavy armor ready to absorb the first assault. Council ships behind, their weapons charged and ready. On the surface of Velcrin Prime, 12 billion people looked up at the sky and prayed. Some prayed to their own gods. Some prayed to human gods. Some just prayed to anyone who would listen. Commander Hyun watched the distance close. All weapons, stand by. Wait for them to enter optimal range. Make every shot count. The Ravagers opened fire first. A wave of bioweapons and organic missiles streaked toward the defensive line. Human point defense systems came online, destroying hundreds of projectiles. But more got through. The first impacts rocked ships across the fleet. Armor held. Shields absorbed damage. Crews worked frantically to repair breaches. Return fire, Admiral Donghae ordered calmly. 4,000 ships opened fire simultaneously. The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire. Kinetic rounds, energy beams, missiles, torpedoes, everything humanity and the Council could build. The Battle of Velcrin Prime had begun. The first wave of Ravager ships crashed against the defensive line like a living tsunami. Their biological hulls absorbed tremendous punishment, regenerating damage even as new wounds appeared. But human and Council weapons kept firing, tearing through flesh and chitin faster than it could heal. Commander Hyun coordinated the defense from the Dauntless. His tactical display showed a nightmare of red enemy markers swarming around blue Allied ships. The numbers were terrible, but the line held. Focus fire on the command nodes, he ordered. Dr. Minji's analysis shows they're the larger vessels with the pulsing green sections. Take them out and we disrupt their coordination. The targeting data spread across the fleet. Gunners adjusted their aim, focusing on the command vessels. When the first one exploded, nearby Ravager ships faltered for several seconds, their movements becoming uncoordinated before recovering. It works, Specialist Junho reported. Each command node controls approximately 50 ships. Destroying them causes temporary confusion. But the Ravagers learned quickly. They repositioned their command nodes deeper into their formation, protecting them with screens of smaller vessels. The Allied fleet had to fight through layers of enemies to reach high-value targets. Captain Yuna led her fighter wing into the teeth of the Ravager swarm. The small craft weaved through incoming fire with desperate precision. Her wingmate, the Trell pilot Solvesh, flew beside her with natural grace. "Stay tight," Yuna commanded. "We're going for that command cluster at marker 7-3. "Understood," Solvesh replied. "The enemy ships move like they're parts of one organism. Beautiful and terrible." "Save the poetry for after we win," Pilot Minho cut in. He was covering their approach, his weapons tracking multiple targets simultaneously. His fighter spun and twisted through impossible maneuvers, destroying 3 Ravager interceptors in quick succession. The fighters punched through the enemy screen. Yuna armed her missiles and locked onto the command node. Fox 3, missiles away. 6 missiles streaked toward the massive biological ship. Point defense fire destroyed 4, but 2 hit. The command node shuddered and exploded from within. 50 Ravager ships suddenly flew without coordination, colliding with each other in confusion. "That's how we do it," Minho shouted, but his celebration was cut short as enemy fire caught his fighter. The craft spun out of control, trailing atmosphere. "Minho's hit," Yuna called. "Anyone nearby?" "I have him," Solvesh responded. The Trell pilot swooped down, matching Minho's tumbling fighter and using his own shields to protect the damaged craft. Together, they limped back toward friendly lines. On board the cruiser Relentless, Colonel Jiwon and his Marines prepared for boarding actions. The Ravagers had learned from Pristine Haven. They sent suicide ships loaded with warriors to crash directly into human vessels, breaching the hulls and flooding inside. "Breach on deck 7, a Marine called out. "They're coming through." Jiwon and his squad rushed to the location. The Ravager warriors were nightmarish creatures, all claws and fangs and hostile biology. They screamed in frequencies that hurt human ears and attacked with mindless fury. The Marines opened fire. Plasma weapons burned through alien flesh. The Ravagers kept coming, climbing over their own dead. Jiwon threw a grenade into the mass of bodies. The explosion tore through the boarding party, but more kept coming through the breach. "Fall back to Choke Point Alpha," Jiwon ordered. "Let them bunch up." The Marines retreated to a narrow corridor. The Ravagers poured after them, funneled into a kill zone. Human soldiers in powered armor stood shoulder to shoulder, their weapons on full automatic. Nothing got through. "Seal the breach," Jiwan commanded once the last Ravager fell. "Hull repair teams, move." Similar battles raged across the fleet. Ravagers tried to board over 200 ships. Some succeeded, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers. But most were repelled by defenders who had trained for exactly this nightmare. Dr. Minji worked in the Horizons lab, monitoring the battle and analyzing data. She discovered something important about the Ravager regeneration. Their biological ships healed using energy from their main reactors. If they took sustained damage, the healing slowed. "All ships concentrate fire," she transmitted. "Don't spread damage. Focus on one target at a time until it's destroyed. Their regeneration can't keep up with sustained assault." The tactic change made an immediate difference. Instead of damaging many ships lightly, the fleet destroyed them one by one. The Ravager advance slowed, but the cost was terrible. Human and Council ships were being destroyed. The destroyer Valiant exploded, taking 300 crew with it. The Velcrin cruiser Morningstar broke apart under concentrated fire. The Trell battleship Poet's Dream rammed a Ravager command ship, destroying both vessels in a massive explosion. Admiral Donghae watched the casualty reports scroll past. Each name was someone who had trusted him to lead them. Each lost ship was a failure that would haunt him forever. But he couldn't stop, couldn't hesitate. The battle had to be won. "How long until Captain Sung-ho reaches deployment range?" he asked. 30 minutes, Commander Hyun replied, "but he's taking heavy fire." "I don't know if he'll make it." Captain Sung-ho's stealth ship Ghost moved through the Ravager fleet like a shadow. Its specialized hull absorbed sensor beams instead of reflecting them. But stealth didn't mean invisible. Sharp-eyed Ravager gunners spotted the shimmer of displaced space and opened fire. "Hull breach on deck 2, reported his co-pilot, a Korvaxian named Thresh. "Sealing bulkheads." "Keep us moving," Sung-ho ordered. "We're almost there." Another hit rocked the ship. Alarms blared. Systems failed. The crew worked frantically to keep the Ghost flying. A young human engineer named Bora called from the engine room. "Captain, the reactor is damaged. We're losing power." "How long can you give me?" Sung-ho asked. 10 minutes, maybe 15. After that, we're dead in space." Sung-ho checked the tactical display. The deployment point was 8 minutes away, if they could just hold together a little longer. The Ghost limped forward, taking hit after hit. Crew members died at their stations, but the survivors kept working. They knew the mission. They knew the cost. "We're in position," Sung-ho announced. "Deploying the jammer now." He activated the quantum jamming device. It was a sphere about 2 meters across, covered in captured Ravager biological tissue. The device began broadcasting interference on the same quantum frequencies the Ravagers used to communicate. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the enemy. 30,000 Ravager ships suddenly lost their coordination. They stopped fighting as a unified force and became a mob of individual vessels with no leadership. "It's working!" Dr. Minji shouted from the horizon. "The jammer is disrupting their hive mind." Admiral Donghae saw the opportunity instantly. "All ships, full assault! Hit them while they're confused." The combined fleet surged forward. Without coordination, the Ravagers couldn't adapt to tactics or concentrate fire effectively. Ships that had been unstoppable when working together became easy targets when alone. But the jammer had a weakness. The Ravagers, sensing the threat, converged on its location. They understood that destroying it would restore their coordination. Hundreds of ships turned toward the Ghost. Sung-ho watched them come and smiled sadly. He had known this mission was one way from the start. "All crew, this is the captain," he said calmly. "It's been an honor serving with you. Tell them we did our duty." The volunteers on the Ghost stood at their stations. Human, Velcrin, Trell, Korvaxian, and others. They came from different worlds, different cultures, but they died as brothers and sisters. The first Ravager volley destroyed the Ghost and everyone aboard. But the jammer continued broadcasting, floating in space, protected by its bioorganic shell. It would keep working for hours, maybe days. Commander Hyun watched the ghost's signature disappear from sensors. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with renewed determination. "Make their sacrifice count," he said quietly. "All ships, press the attack." The battle became a slaughter in humanity's favor. Confused Ravagers flew erratic patterns, colliding with each other. Some tried to retreat, others attacked blindly. None showed the terrifying coordination that had made them unstoppable. Captain Yuna's fighter wing tore through enemy formations. Pilot Minho, his fighter repaired enough to fly, rejoined the battle with vengeance in his heart. The fighters struck like Earth's ancient raptors, hunting in coordinated packs. Colonel Ji-won's Marines boarded damaged Ravager ships, fighting through biological corridors to plant explosives. They moved like shadows, using tactics developed in 100 Earth conflicts. The Ravagers, bred for frontal assault, couldn't handle human guerrilla warfare. Engineer Nari's weapons performed beyond expectations. The retrofitted Council ships, which had seemed so fragile, proved surprisingly resilient. The Velkrin cruiser, Determination, reinforced with human armor, survived 3 direct hits that would have destroyed the original design. The Trell squadrons, trained in human tactics but adding their own cultural flair, composed battle poems as they fought. Their ships moved with deadly grace, each maneuver both brutal and beautiful. The Korvaxian logistics officers kept supply lines running perfectly despite the chaos. Ammunition reached ships before they ran dry. Damaged vessels were directed to repair stations with optimal efficiency. Their mathematical precision was as valuable as any weapon. Dr. Hana, the xenopsychologist, worked in the medical bays treating wounded from every species. She used her understanding of alien psychology to help them process the trauma of combat. The Veldrin empaths worked beside her, sensing emotional damage and providing comfort. The battle raged for 3 days without pause. Crews fought until they collapsed from exhaustion, then were replaced by fresh teams. Ships rotated through repair stations, patching hull breaches and reloading weapons before rejoining the fight. The Ravagers fought desperately. Without coordination, they relied on individual ship intelligence and instinctive aggression. It wasn't enough. The combined fleet had training, discipline, and most importantly, the will to protect their homes. On the 3rd day, Dr. Minji detected a change in Ravager behavior. "They're retreating. I'm picking up panic signals from their surviving command nodes." Admiral Donghei's voice was cold. "No mercy. An enemy that targets civilians doesn't get to escape and try again. All ships, pursuit course. We end this here." The Allied fleet hunted down the fleeing Ravagers methodically. Some tried to surrender, broadcasting distress signals. But human doctrine was clear, and the Council species had learned its harsh logic. You don't give enemies who commit genocide a second chance. By the end of the 3rd day, the Ravager main fleet was destroyed. 30,000 ships reduced to debris. The cost was terrible. The combined fleet had lost 600 human vessels and 1,200 Council ships. Over 200,000 soldiers from all species were dead or wounded. But Velkrin Prime was saved. 12 billion lives preserved, and the Ravager threat was eliminated completely. The silence after the battle was almost worse than the fighting. Ships drifted through debris fields, their crews too exhausted to celebrate. Medical bays overflowed with wounded from dozens of species. Engineering teams worked frantically to keep damaged vessels from breaking apart completely. Commander Hyun walked through the corridors of the Dauntless, seeing the cost of victory written on every bulkhead. Scorch marks where Ravager weapons had breached the hull. Sealed sections where crew members had died at their stations. Emergency patches covering holes that still leaked atmosphere. He found Admiral Donghei in his office, staring at casualty reports. The old admiral looked like he had aged 10 years in 3 days. 200,000 dead, Donghei said quietly. That's 200,000 people who trusted us to bring them home. They died saving 12 billion others, Hyun replied. They knew the stakes. Knowing doesn't make it easier. Donghei closed the reports and stood. But you're right. They chose to be here. We honor them by making sure their sacrifice mattered. On the surface of Velkrin Prime, Celebrations erupted. 12 billion people who had faced certain death now had a future. They poured into streets, weeping and cheering. Many humans were surprised to receive thanks from the same species that had imprisoned them for 2 decades. Councillor Velnari stood in the main square of the capital city, surrounded by his people. He watched human ships in orbit and thought about how wrong he had been. For years, he had voted to keep humanity quarantined, believing them too dangerous to trust. He had been right about the danger, but wrong about what it meant. A human medical ship landed nearby, bringing supplies and doctors. Velcrin children ran toward it, excited to meet the legendary Deathworlders. The human crew smiled and handed out medical supplies, food, and small toys. These same humans had killed thousands of Ravagers with cold efficiency just hours earlier. That evening, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. For the first time, the session was held via communication from multiple worlds. The council building on Velcrin Prime had been damaged in the battle. Ambassador Taeyang appeared on screen from the Dauntless. He looked tired but determined. Beside him stood Admiral Donghae and Commander Hyun. The council chamber was subdued. No one spoke of human danger or violence now. They had seen what real monsters looked like, and they understood the difference between warriors and murderers. The council owes humanity a debt that cannot be repaid, began the Trell High Speaker, an elderly leader whose species had lost 300 ships in the battle. We imprisoned you for what you might do, but when we needed you, you came without hesitation. We were wrong. Other councillors echoed the sentiment. The proud Velcrin, the ancient Korvaxians, the sophisticated Zyth, all admitted their mistake. Ambassador Taeyang listened patiently, then spoke. The past is done. What matters now is the future. The Ravagers are defeated, but they showed us that the galaxy has real threats. We can't go back to the old ways. The Council needs a real defense force. You're suggesting permanent human military leadership? Asked a Korvaxian councillor. I'm suggesting we stop pretending war is impossible, Taeyang replied. The Council believed violence was outdated. That belief almost cost you everything. Humanity will help build a force that can protect all species. But this time, we do it as partners, not prisoners. The vote was unanimous. All quarantine restrictions on humanity were permanently lifted. Earth would receive a permanent seat on the Council Security Committee. More importantly, humans would lead the establishment of a true galactic defense force. The political implications were enormous. For 10,000 years, the Council had been led by species from paradise worlds. Now, the Deathworlders would have equal voice in galactic affairs. But there was more work to do before anyone could rest. Dr. Minji led a scientific expedition to study the destroyed Ravager vessels. She needed to understand where they came from and ensure no others existed. What she found was disturbing. The Ravagers had evolved on a world called Scar, a planet with extreme gravity, toxic atmosphere, and deadly radiation. Life there had become incredibly aggressive just to survive. The dominant species developed a hive mind to coordinate hunting strategies. But they had depleted their world's resources. The Ravager expansion wasn't conquest for glory. It was survival. They consumed other civilizations because their home world could no longer support them. They were desperate, Minji explained to the Council. Not evil, just desperate. Their biology gave them no choice but to consume or die. Does that excuse genocide? Commander Hyun asked. No, Minji replied. But it explains it, and it warns us. The galaxy has limited resources. If we're not careful, any species might become the next Ravagers. Her report led to major changes in Council policy. Resources would be shared more fairly. Colonies would be established with sustainability in mind. The Council would watch for species approaching similar desperation. Engineer Nari worked with Council scientists to establish new shipyard standards. The beautiful but fragile vessels of the past would be replaced by ships designed by people who understood that space was hostile. We're not making everything ugly, she explained to worried Velcrin designers. We're making them practical. A ship can be beautiful and functional. It just requires different thinking. The new designs combined Council aesthetics with human engineering. They were elegant but armored, spacious but efficient. They looked like art, and fought like weapons. Captain Yuna was promoted to admiral at age 28, becoming the youngest flag officer in human history. She took command of the new Galactic Defense Academy, training pilots from every species in combat flying. Her approach was tough but fair. She pushed students hard, but she also understood that not every species could match human endurance. The Lumens couldn't handle high gravity, so she trained them in zero-gravity combat. The gaseous Xyth couldn't perform tight turns, so she taught them long-range precision attacks. Everyone has strengths, she told her instructors. Our job is to find them and build on them. Pilot Minho recovered from his injuries and became her chief instructor. Solvesh, the Trell ace, stayed on as well. Together, they created a training program that produced the best multi-species fighter squadrons in galactic history. Colonel Jiwan established the Galactic Marine Corps. He recruited from every species willing to learn. Some, like the Trell warriors, took to it naturally. Others struggled but persevered. The Marines became a symbol of unity, soldiers from different worlds fighting together. The training was brutal. Jiwan made no compromises for comfort, but he also made sure every species was respected. Velcrin Marines learned to fight in heavy gravity. Korvaxian Marines trained in close-quarters combat despite their crystalline bodies being fragile. The Veldrin empaths became battlefield medics. We're not making everyone human, Jiwan explained. We're making everyone soldiers. That means understanding your limits and working within them. Dr. Hana expanded her psychological support program across the fleet. The trauma of war affected every species differently. Humans developed PTSD. Velcrin experienced deep emotional scarring. Korvaxians developed fracture patterns in their crystalline matrix. Each species needed specific care. War changes people, Hana said in her reports, but it doesn't have to destroy them. With proper support, warriors can return to peace. Her work became standard across military and civilian sectors. The Council finally understood that victory had costs beyond casualties, and those costs needed treatment. 6 months after the battle, a memorial was dedicated on Velcrin Prime. It listed every name of every soldier who died defending the planet. 200,000 names from 47 species. Human names like Sungho and Bora stood beside Velcrin, Trell, and Korvaxian names. The ceremony brought together representatives from across the galaxy. Councillor Velnari gave the main speech, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. We gathered here to remember those who fell in our darkest hour. They came from different worlds. They spoke different languages. They believed in different gods. But they shared one belief, that innocent lives are worth protecting, that civilization is worth defending, that the strong have a duty to protect the weak. He paused, looking at the human delegation. We called them Deathworlders. We called them dangerous. We were right. They are dangerous, but not to those who seek peace. They are dangerous to those who threaten the innocent. They are the monsters we want on our side when the darkness comes. The crowd observed silence for the fallen. Then, slowly, people began to applaud. It started with the Velcrin, then spread to every species present. They applauded for the dead who had given everything. They applauded for the living who had fought. They applauded for the future those sacrifices had bought. Commander Hune stood with the other human officers, uncomfortable with the attention. He was promoted to Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense, a position that gave him authority over all military forces. It was power he had never wanted, but couldn't refuse. How do you feel about all this? Admiral Donghae asked him quietly. Scared, Hyun admitted. We showed them we can fight. Now they expect us to solve every problem with violence. Then we teach them the other lesson, Donghae replied. That real warriors know when not to fight. That strength means protecting the weak, not dominating them. You think they'll learn that? Donghae smiled. They learned we're not monsters. They can learn the rest. That night, the human officers gathered privately to remember their own dead. Captain Yuna raised a glass to Minho, who had survived but whose best friend had died in the battle. Colonel Jiwan honored the 50 Marines who hadn't come home. Engineer Nari remembered the technicians who had worked until their ships exploded around them. Dr. Minji spoke for all of them. We came here to prove we weren't dangerous animals. Instead, we proved we were exactly that dangerous, but by choice. We're predators who chose to protect prey instead of hunting it. Maybe that's what makes us different from the Ravagers. Not that we can fight, but that we can choose not to. The weeks that followed brought massive changes. Human colony ships departed for new worlds, no longer restricted to the solar system. Earth's population, compressed for 2 decades, spread across space eagerly. But humans also helped other species expand safely. They surveyed worlds for dangers that Paradise Worlders wouldn't recognize. They established defense networks to protect colonies. They trained local forces to handle problems. The galaxy was safer, but also more aware of its dangers. 3 months after the battle, Commander Hune stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, preparing for a patrol of the Outer Rim. The ship had been repaired and upgraded. New crew members filled positions left empty by the dead. He received a transmission from Admiral Donghae, still on Earth. "The Council is scared of us again," Donghae said, his tone amused. "But for different reasons now. They're scared of disappointing us." Hyun smiled. "Good. Maybe they'll think twice before starting fights they can't finish. Besides, we've got their backs now. Just remember, Hyun, we're not their conquerors. We're their partners. I know, but partners who carry the biggest stick." The Dauntless departed for patrol, leading a squadron of human and council ships. On the bridge, officers from 5 species worked together with practiced efficiency. A Velcrin navigator plotted courses. A Trell tactical officer monitored sensors. A Korvaxian communications specialist maintained fleet coordination. And humans commanded, guided by lessons learned on Earth's harsh surface. The signal that had unleashed the Deathworlder fleet had been a cry for help. Humanity had answered, not for glory or conquest, but because it was the right thing to do. In doing so, they had proven something important. That survivors of a brutal world don't just endure, they protect, they defend. They stand between the innocent and the darkness. The galaxy had learned that Deathworlders aren't the monsters to fear. They're the monsters you want standing beside you when the nightmares come calling. And if new nightmares appeared, humanity would be ready. Not alone, but with allies who had learned that sometimes, to preserve civilization, you must be willing to unleash warriors. The Deathworlder fleet patrolled the darkness, watching for threats. Behind them, billions of people lived in safety, able to dream and create and love because others stood guard. That was the real victory. Not the battles won, but the peace defended. Not the enemies destroyed, but the innocents saved. Commander Hyun looked at the stars ahead and thought about Captain Sung-ho, who had given everything to buy time for others to live. About Pilot Minho's friend, who had died protecting a colony that wasn't even human. About 200,000 names on a memorial, each one representing someone who understood that some things were worth dying for. "All stations, maintain standard patrol," he ordered. "Stay sharp, stay ready." Because the darkness was still out there. It always would be. But now, the galaxy had guardians who understood the darkness intimately. Who had come from it, learned from it, and refused to let it win. The Deathworlder fleet sailed into the night, carrying hope instead of fear. And the galaxy was better for it.